I'm Fiona and I'm a friend of Sue Neill-Fraser's. I first met Bob, in fact, at a party. Bob's dinner parties were legendary and he had all sorts of very interesting people there. Bob was very intelligent. He had a very dry, droll sense of humour. He had very refined ideas about what was fair and what wasn't fair, and he would become incensed about injustice. And he, despite being highly intelligent, much more intelligent than I ever was, he was never ever discriminatory to anybody else who may not have had quite the intellect that he had. I worked at the hospital where Bob worked, but I had never met him because he'd been closeted away in the Holman clinic doing the work he did, and I was busy with the sick people because I was a nurse. And our paths never crossed, but they kind of occasionally did after that, because I was still working at the hospital when I first knew him in the early 1980s. And yeah, his parties were just so much fun. And Sue came to one of the dinner parties with another gentleman who's, I might say, still a close friend. And sometime after that, her and Bob established a relationship. They just became part of the circle. It was Bob and Sue, Fiona and John, and there were, a number of other people. And that included Philip Trefford, who actually in due course created so much conflict for Sue during the trial. At Sue and Bob, they had a healthy repartee. Sue was very kind, very welcoming. She was, and still is, she has a good sense of humour. Somewhat quirky and maybe a little dark at times, but it matched my sense of humour, and we got on great. We just clicked, and so we did quite a lot of things to do together. She loved boats, we had a boat, she had a boat, so there was a lot of common ground there with Sue, but I never ever saw her be spiteful to anyone. And yes, there was times when she disagreed with Bob, as there's times when I disagree with my husband, and most people in a relationship will disagree with each other at times. But it was never spiteful, it was never vindictive, it was never sniping, as has been said in the press. I never witnessed that. I only ever saw a healthy debate. When we came home, I immediately got in touch with Sue, and we did things like we walked around the beaches and the foreshores. We walked around the beaches all around the verge of the Derwent and right down towards Bruny, right down to Tinderbox, and right around into the bays around Storm Bay, in case something had washed up that we would find. Well, we felt like we wanted to do something to try and help. And like Sue, we wanted to help find Bob. I was really annoyed. I didn't have a very high opinion of reporters, because I thought they got it wrong too often, and that how they wrote things was, not at a standard that I expected it should have been for something that was in the wider media. But yeah, I was really, really annoyed that they got it so wrong. And I understand that some of those things had been said in the court about painting a bad picture about Sue, and the media picked up on that and elaborated. And that, that just really frustrated me. How on earth could Sue get a fair trial? I'm sure she didn't get a fair trial. There were so many things that were offered up in court that were just a fairy tale. They were a fallacy. You know, they were talking about scenarios of how she might have killed him, but they never ever provided any proof. They talked about hitting him on the head with a big spanner, but they never presented the spanner. They never presented Bob's, you know, any evidence that that's what had happened.